Guy Haberman, not only is he a superstar YouTuber on NFL and 49ers Matters, he's also filling in for the legendary Greg Papa right now. We wish Greg Papa the best with his health issue, and he has done a wonderful job announcing this preseason, filling in. You're an announcer, you're a broadcaster, but you're also somebody with takes, with opinions, and you're a fine guest on House of Strauss. And I do believe there's a cohort of my listenership that is excited about this and is happy that you're present and believes you can be a contributor. But I'm not even explaining, Guy, what this is.
Okay.
I'm going to call it the football skeptic. As an outsider, you are the insider. You're at training camp. You're watching all these things. I have a bunch of half-baked, idiotic ideas. Secretly, I feel like all the people in football who spend 100 hours a week breaking this all down might be wrong. And me, slapdash, seat of the pants, I might be right. And so I have a few things I'm going to throw at you. And then in the back half of this podcast, maybe you've got questions for me. I don't know if you do. That's what I'm throwing out there as my tease.
Yeah, I always say, like, when I have you on my show, I start with asking questions, and then it just becomes you asking me questions I don't know the answer to. You have football skeptic at the bottom of the YouTube. I would say the other word I think I've described you before is football outsider, right? Mm-hmm. Like you're a sports guy and you are a football guy, but you're outside enough that you ask questions that that are actually challenging to answer. You know little that they're challenging to answer, but you don't know so little. I'm just to prove a point. But
I come from the basketball perspective, so I ask questions like, have they considered bouncing the ball? Have they considered that when after they catch it?
You can bounce it and kick it. You can do that. Yeah,
you can do that. It is interesting. I remember, this is going to sound like I made up this story, but when I was in college, my friend who was living in my house, I don't know how he met this woman. There were international students at the college. I don't know how he met her. Good luck to him. He was really trying. He was broadening his horizons. He met a woman from Siberia. She was from literal Siberia in Russia, and brought her over to her house during the 2006 NBA Finals, the Dwayne Wade getting every call against the Dallas Mavericks Finals. And because she hailed from a culture that perhaps if we're stereotyping is rather direct, rather blunt, she would just ask these questions during tense fourth quarters, and nobody would have ever asked that question before. And it was just amazing it was happening in that moment of tension. And I would think, I kind of like that we're getting that question, but the question could be, at one point she said, I think it's because Dirk wasn't in the game, she just went, "Why are all the players black?" Just balls in the air. Pivotal possession.
Sounds like a perfect column for you.
I mean, I would say they're not all, but I don't know. But it was just like that sort of question. It was like, well, it's interesting. We have an outsider's presence right here, and but what was also interesting about it? She knew who Shaquille O'Neal was. She knew nothing at all about anything else. Absolutely blank slate. But Shaquille O'Neal in the Miami Heat, she knew who that was. So that was also a little revelation of, okay, that's his fame level. His fame level extends to Siberia. None of these other guys are making it even close. They're not getting across the water.
I think sports, we often way overestimate the general public's ability to identify who we think the most famous people are. If I asked you right now, who do you think pick the two most identifiable people in college football right now? Who do you think they are? What would you say?
The two most identifiable people.
Yeah, if we did a
football
survey of 10,000 people,
man,
who has the highest Q rating? I mean, one of them would have to be Deion Sanders.
This is a revelation of a problem, because it would have been easy for me to say, "Oh, Nick Saban." Maybe I could count him because he's on a broadcast team for ESPN, but I would have said Nick Saban.
Okay.
And Deion, I guess, is the other guy, but there's people have exited the arena. Harbaugh no longer there. It's just Yeah, I don't know if I could come up with a whole lot.
I would say
especially if we're
Dion
talking
and
international.
I think, like, to prove the point, you'd say Dion and Arch Manning, who's barely played, but he's a Manning. Like, those are probably the two most famous people in college football right now.
Yeah.
Arch Manning is Peyton Manning's nephew, and he plays at Texas. But it's less important that he plays at Texas. It's more important that he's Peyton Manning's nephew.
Yeah. It's Manning residue is what we got going on.
Right.
And I can't come up with anything. I'm trying to get creative. I'm trying to figure it out. And especially if we're thinking about international, there's nothing other than Deion Sanders that could really cross a border, the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, I would agree. But I would bet, even forget internet, like, you go to international because you think, like, that's where you have to go to find people who wouldn't know. But we could find them right here. It's just not, you know.
I don't think most of my neighbors know who Arch Manning is. Not even 10% probably.
Right.
I don't think. But
they definitely don't know who Kirk Ferentz is, the coach at Iowa. You know what I mean? Like, the guy's been coaching 25 years.
Well, also people just consume this stuff differently than we do. My neighbor, I frequently bring him up. Great guy, personal trainer, portrait of psychological health. He just lives life right. He doesn't want too much internet. He yells at me if we're watching a 49er game together and I pick up the phone. He is a huge 49ers fan. He does not read a word about the team. He does not watch any YouTube videos. I don't know how he even knows when the games are. He doesn't really follow any of the off-season stuff. He doesn't.
Yeah, that's
maybe
great.
He learns about word of mouth. He just sits down and in that moment cares way more than I do about what happens. And then when the game is over, he returns to his life.
I would love his opinions, right? Like, what are his unmanipulated from the outs? He hasn't watched a YouTube. He doesn't know who's arguing with who in the YouTube verse or the social media verse. He doesn't know what the narratives are. I hate the word narratives, but right. Like, what does he just think about Brock Purdy just from sitting there and watching?
This is my neighbor Dez, who I mentioned in my early wake up article.
Yeah.
And I think his opinions are largely correct because they're uncorrupted.
It's great.
Or very early on, Trey Lance, this guy sucks. Get him out of here.
Interesting.
I'm not anchored. I'm not part of all these different content creator debates about this guy. They put him in the game. There's just, God love him. I don't know if Shanahan's being honest when he says he's rooting for him, but I'd certainly want what sounds like a good guy to have a second act. But there was nothing I saw at all that looked like anything when he was in. I think he had a long completion in a preseason game. That's cool. But yeah, my neighbor just went, this guy, he sucks. He's bad. Get him out of here. And then when Brock goes in, oh, this guy's good. It was that simple. It was that simple. Nothing that has anything to do. And when I told him that there were vicious online debates about all this stuff, he just looked confused to me. He looked so bewildered.
What a life. What a life.
The next year.
I love it.
When Brock was coming off the elbow, or was it the elbow? Yeah, the elbow. Yep. And there were people who were saying maybe it should be Lance. He looked at me like I had three heads when I said there were a lot of people who were saying it should be Lance and were angry that Lance wasn't getting enough of a shot. He just looked at me. No, dude, really? No, you're joking. You're joking. Like, yeah, they're really, there are those people. It's like, no way.
But that's also like, you're also, kind of I don't know what the word would be, but it's a little
tainting the jury.
Yeah. A lot of people is like, a lot of people a lot of people who are watching practice every day, or a lot of people who just have an opinion. Because those are two different things.
I don't know. If we revisited it, I think we might be surprised at how certain opinions were represented back then. And yeah, I'd have to go back and research that. But I just thought
I am very aware of how certain opinions were represented back then. And I thought the opinion that you relayed to your neighbor Des was mostly a was not a sincere opinion for the most part.
Oh, you're calling me a liar on my own.
No, I'm not calling you a liar. I'm saying that opinion was not.
The people advancing it, you felt like they were chumming the waters. They weren't really. There was just no way
to. Yeah, I mean, the other part of it was Trey Lance was practicing against Sam Darnold.
Yeah,
and Sam Darnold was better than him in practice.
Yeah.
Now, not everybody gets to see that, so I understand that. But now we're getting,
we're getting into the weeds of
very in the weeds. But I would say this, Ethan, like one thing in modern language that I think captures what it's trying to capture is the word unserious. Like that opinion, that's an unserious opinion.
Well, in a way, it reminded me of the opinions people have sometimes about NBA MVP voting, where they say, I'm not saying he should be MVP, but he should be in the conversation. And you go, well, if you don't think he should be MVP, then why should he be in the conversation? And I thought there was a similarity there where back then it was, look, I'm not putting my full force behind the idea that this guy should get more of an opportunity, but what Shanahan's done to him is just wrong. It's just wrong what he's done to him. And it felt like that, where there was a want of a critique, but at some level, there wasn't the confidence to really completely say that this guy was actually great and he'd been screwed over by the Niners because, I don't know, they're evil. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the idea or the theory was there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be fair to say I don't think he's good at the time. I don't think he's good, but it doesn't mean he can't be good.
Yeah.
Like, that's a fine opinion.
Yeah.
He's never played. He hasn't played. He barely played. He played 1 year a quarterback and then had the COVID year. So he didn't play that year. He just played one game. And then he came here and he got hurt and he didn't look comfortable and he hasn't thrown that many passes. He didn't throw it much in high school. Like, all of that's legitimate. He still hasn't thrown the ball that much. Right. I mean, I think if he's good, the Jim Harbaugh, like, he's just playing, which I think it's fair to say you just need to play. We all think we were good at 21. And then you look back at the thing you do now that you did when you were 21. And you're like, I just needed reps. I always hated that feedback. I would get it. I would send people in broadcasting my tape. They're like, oh, you're doing a good job. Just keep getting those reps. I'm like, what? That is such a general, but it really is true.
It doesn't feel like improvement is, okay, so a few different thoughts. I'm not saying it will never happen. I fear Justin Herbert going down and then Trey Lance throws for 5 touchdowns. And here I am saying it's impossible. I'm just saying that nothing he showed looked like it could lead to anything in the time that I watched him. And my neighbor Dez was even more emphatic in that opinion. And I just like it as sort of the more specific something is, the broader it can be. This is a very specific conversation that not everybody listening has a lot of grounding in, but they can relate to the idea, the comedy of extremely online man, that's me, communicating with not online man. I'm sure it would be a similar result if I sat down with Des right now and said, so there's this jeans campaign for Sydney Sweeney. And I just start relaying whatever that madness is and trying to explain that. But yeah, in this case, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. People get anchored. They have sympathy. Right now, I feel as though there's all this sympathy for Anthony Richardson. And I just have the dumb guy take once again. I go, yeah, the Colts might be a bad organization, but it just seems like he's bad. It just seems like he's not good at this. Maybe he will be good at this, but that maybe feels unlikely, or at least unlikely enough for any team to invest in it potentially happening. And you're going to have all these conversations and everything else. And end of the day, you're just looking at a guy who couldn't complete a lot of passes in college and couldn't complete a lot of passes as a pro. And sometimes these things are you can do it or you can't do it. And maybe you could theoretically do it, but if you didn't do it, you missed your shot. And that's that.
Yeah. Well, I think quarterbacking is a lot like it requires a lot of nurturing. And the NFL is not a nurturing place.
No, not the nurturing football league.
No, it's not the nurturing football league. And Trey Lance needed nurturing probably just like Anthony Richardson. Like, they both are guys, if you look historically, that did not throw a lot of passes before they reached the NFL. So they needed development. And the NFL is not a developmental league. And even when they draft the player and it's their responsibility to develop that player, they are more likely to move on to another player. than to develop that player because they just don't have time. And I think what's different about the Colts and the 49ers, the Colts, well, I guess the Colts want to be good. Also, the Niners were trying to win a championship on the same timeline. You know, I know you love parallel timelines. That's a Warriors reference.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just those two things are completely opposed. Developing a quarterback and trying to win a championship at the same time are really hard. That's what makes Purdy so unique is he was good right away.
Yeah.
Right. He was good right away. He was helpful to a championship contender right away.
And I think in a very scary circumstance, it's got to be a crazy situation to be thrown in there. And if you come through, then you have realized your dreams. And if you fail, then that's probably it. And yeah, I think that it's okay. I got to get into the football skepticism. I'm getting into banalities here, Guy. I'm saying, yeah, it's good when you play well. You know, that's good. That is very good when that happens. And it's bad when you play badly. I think we can all agree on that. Okay. I'm going to toss some ideas at you or just some thoughts from the skeptic's position. So right now, a lot of content creators and media people are wondering why the hell the 49ers have so many injuries. What is going on? Why so many? Kyle Shanahan's talking about it. And this isn't just the 49ers. There are devastating injuries all over the league in preseason. And I understand the idea that you have to practice football to play football. Kyle Shanahan keeps saying it. You have to build calluses. There's a worry about how you're going to get hurt if you don't practice and you don't take some hits. But have we gotten to the point where you're just better off almost doing nothing other than weightlifting, building the armor up, cardio, study in the film room, and it's worth it just to have literally everybody healthy week one, and maybe everybody is doing it wrong? Is that crazy to think that because of tradition and coaches wanting to coach that they're actually doing it wrong? And the future, and what you should do if you're some wacky billionaire and you're running a team, is have these guys do absolutely nothing and just dealing with whatever game speed problems they have in week one.
It'd be fun to see somebody experiment with it. You know, the problem with answering any of your questions is that they are built for somebody to say, no, Ethan, that's a dumb idea, and then immediately prove that they are also a closed-minded thinker.
You're overthinking. I'm not trying to trap anybody.
The thing I would say is the way that teams practice is built, I think, pretty scientifically. The times they practice, the days they practice, the amount of time they have off, like this is done with a lot of consultation of sleep specialists and trainers, and you know, they've got GPS monitors on all the players. They know how hard you're practicing. They know if you're coming back from injury and you are ramping up to return, that the drills you ran on the side weren't at full speed, and so they're not going to return you to practice, all that kind of stuff. So I think that's the first thing, right? These are not coaches banging their head against the wall going, this is the way I did it before, and so this is the way we'll do it now.
Oklahoma drill.
Oklahoma drill, 2-a-days, 115 degrees. You can get water when we're done. But I mean, there's also, you cannot deny that they're very injured. I don't know if you saw our friend Tim Kawakami's theory, because he asked, I was there yesterday when he asked Kyle Shanahan about it. And Kyle, I mean, the head coach of the Niners, I'm saying to some of your listeners who probably aren't listening anymore if they need that information. But even he's perplexed. He's like, yeah, we're going to study. It's clear we're going to have to study this again. There's just so little data, I think, to study because every body is different, right? And I think Kawakami's theory was interesting. He said in the SF Standard today, he wrote, my personal theory is that most injuries are random. But the Niners of this era have been a little too eager to add players with recent injury histories.
I totally disagree.
And
with
a little
Tim.
too dismissive of some veterans who aren't flashy but habitually stay healthy. So he's saying the best way to stay healthy or to be healthy is to bring in players who have a history of being healthy. Like, how do you connect a hyperextended knee in a practice to a hamstring in OTAs to a high ankle sprain in a game to... Right.
Yeah.
They're very hard to connect.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a little more complicated. I don't totally disagree with Tim. Obviously, I disagree that there are injury prone people and not injury prone people. I think, and it's interesting because I remember dealing with all this stuff with Tim when he was my boss and we were talking about Warrior situations and injuries. And I'm almost looking at this more from the NBA perspective. NBA perspective is you shouldn't be walking into your first game with a bunch of injured guys. That's not typically what happens in the NBA. So I'm almost shocked because of what I'm used to in the non-contact sport. But I think there are injuries that are luck. And then there are injuries that were going to happen. And it's the fault of somebody, frankly. I don't know if it's the fault of the player or the training staff, but it's a load issue. It's something that should have been monitored. And sometimes as human beings, what we call luck is just our lack of understanding. It's almost like when people would see something amazing in nature many years ago and they'd call it magic or blame the gods. No, things happen for reasons. Everything happens for a reason. And sometimes there's an injury where, I don't know, there was that crazy one with Gordon Hayward where he was going up for a lob and he gets just knocked at a crazy angle and anybody's leg would have shattered in that position with that force from that angle. But then you see these non-contact injuries, and when they're non-contact injuries, that's a time bomb. That's just something that was going to happen. And so I don't buy the idea from teams that this is just luck. Obviously, there's a component of luck, but I think it's like anything else in sports where you have shooting luck, but you have better shots, and you work to get better shots because on balance, you'll get better luck. That's how I see it with injuries. And it might be unfair in a sport as chaotic and violent as NFL football.
I don't know the answer. I know that when I watch football up close, I'm amazed on every play that somebody doesn't get hurt. There is so much force, movement. Really, it's around the line of scrimmage, running plays, legs. You can't tell whose leg is who's falling from where.
I want to see. I want to hear you call a game that way, just for one of the games where you're just going, "Oh, ow, oh, Jesus."
I mean, that's how I feel. That's how it probably feels. You're a parent. I'm about to be a parent to watch your child on a jungle gym, right? Like I remember, there's a new park in San Francisco, the Tunnel Tops out by Crissy Field. Have you been out there?
I have not.
Tell me about it. They're fantastic. It's a really awesome park. Like jungle, all kinds of kid stuff. And they've got a coffee shop and it's great. A lot of great walking. And we were there with a friend recently and there's like this really high rock climbing wall. It's not supervised. It's just there for kids to climb. And I was standing with my friend Ashley as she's watching her daughter, her young child at 9 feet in the air. And I said, "Is this terrifying for you?" Because it's terrifying for me. And she said, "Yes."
She said, "Yeah, but at this point in the season, you got to build calluses and stuff."
But it's true. She said, I just have to allow her to do this. And, that's how I feel watching every football game is you walk out of it, but I think we have in a weird way, like an unrealistic sense sometimes of how healthy you should be walking out of a game because we see people walk off the field and we don't see what they do to maintain and get ready for the next Sunday or Saturday. But I don't know the answer here for the Niners. To your original question, it's interesting. A football person would say you could get to week 1 healthy with 0 practice, and then everybody would really struggle to get to the second week of the season because they're not actually prepared to take on that physicality. Now, your response would be, well, a guy that Brandon Ayuk's going to come back week 7 and just be ready to roll. And he'd shake off a couple weeks of rust, but at least
football skeptic got a little ammo right there.
So that would be their answer is, well, just because we get to week 1 healthy doesn't mean we'll be healthy week 5. I think we'll be more beat up week 5 because we weren't ready for the season, which I don't know. I mean, I guess they treat it kind of like running for marathons, which I've never done, but you talk to people who do, you never run. They don't run the full distance, right?
Yeah.
Which, when you watch these NFL teams, they don't do the full thing. Like Brock Purdy's not out there playing 4 quarters of football. And Trent Williams isn't playing any. Nick Bosa's not, they do a joint practice. They practice against each other. They kind of treat it that way. They don't run the full distance, but they build up to being able, by the end of the year, to have survived 17 weeks.
Yeah, the marathon analogy makes sense because you do have to ramp up for a marathon, but what's so strange about football is many things, but this is one I hadn't thought about until recently, which is that these guys are at their most muscular day one of training camp. And in the off season, they can build up the armor. And then there's so much pain and injury and clashing that all they can really do is maintain it. But they're almost shrinking, they're weakening over the season. And from that vantage, in theory, wouldn't you just want to be doing that and building up the armor all the way to week one? I don't know. I just know if something happens and I accidentally make $1 billion, it seems like by the time that an NFL team might be up for sale, I might need 10 billion. I might have to think a little bigger guy. I'm trying it. I'm going to be laughed out of the league like Vivek musing about 4-on-5. That's what's going to happen.
Every owner does it the same way. They come in with big ideas. We're going to revolutionize. It's an interesting thing. How do NBA teams? I mean, I guess you have 82 games. Your individual game matters less in other sports, so it's hard to compare to football. Your week one game against the Seahawks might be the one that decides the whole thing, you know?
Yeah, the NBA turned the season into preseason. They did a little thing called load management was how they dealt with all of this. And guys are getting hurt. You know, it's this paradox of the more we understand about sports science, the more guys are getting hurt. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the demands of excellence and how optimizing for making the best play is doing the opposite for what's best for your body. And make the best play is winning out. And that's why you're seeing more of these tears, which...
Could I make one more point on that before you transition? You looked physically like you're about to transition topics.
I was, but
you have a physical tell.
You mean when I look over at the thing I wrote down? Is that the physical tell?
I just know I've talked to basketball coaches who think that by the time a guy gets to college, he's played way too much. Not too much, but so much. And the 2 games a day with AAU or 5 games in 2 days or whatever it is, that there is just so much wear and tear on a basketball player's knees. You know, as you know, basketball players describe it as like they're eventually everybody's brakes go out, meaning like your knees, right? As good as LeBron is, you watch him run around, his brakes aren't the same as they once were, which of course they're not. There's just so much mileage. And that everybody's brakes will go out eventually after, to your point, a certain amount of load. You know, did Dre Greenlaw blow out his Achilles in the Super Bowl running off the sideline because, well, if he hadn't done it then, he was going to do it 3 plays later? Or was it just that specific movement at that specific moment is what did him in? You know,
I'm going to go with the former.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think. I remember hearing a doctor say that. You play pickup basketball long enough, it's a matter of when, not if.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't think there was a way of avoiding that one. Well, to transition to the topic, because I don't know if we're going to settle any of these. I mean, definitely not the first one, but I advanced a theory last season, and I want to debate it a little bit here. Not debate it. You might agree with me. I think one of the more underrated storylines is that defense has been gaining on offense. And I think it's underrated because it almost runs counter to the way people feel. The way people feel is that the game is soft now, and quarterbacks, you can't even breathe on them without getting some horrible penalty. PIs all over the place. And back in the day, you could just murder guys out there. And so therefore playing offense is easier, but that's not what the numbers say. Offense just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. The last decade, it's declined. I wish I had the stats handy, but you can find them if you look for them. And my theory on why I'm good at these really dumb guy theories, these sort of obvious theories that people don't talk about, is that defense is about taking up space. And in the taking up of space, as everybody's trying to get bigger, faster, stronger, in that race, it advantages the defense. When guys are getting faster, it shrinks the space. You almost see an example of this when they take guys off the ice in hockey. If it becomes 4-on-4 or 3-on-3, scoring is easier. There's more space. So I have a paragraph, and because there are all sorts of, by the way, theories on this stuff, and a lot of people talk about the decline of offensive line play and how quarterbacks don't play enough college. That might be true, but I want to know if you think it's that stuff or what I'm going to describe. There's a finite amount of space, and increasingly it's crowded by more effective defensive players. Even if modern quarterbacks can run faster and throw the ball farther than past iterations, they largely can't overcome this collective space shrinkage. Sure, your top wide receiver now runs a 4.3 or 4.4 40 time, whereas he would have run 4.5 or 4.6 a decade or two ago. But when the ball is in the air, he's being chased by multiple defensive players who run a clip quicker than in years past. The overall effect is that there's just less field. What do you think of that theory?
I think it's a good theory.
Thank you. Okay, move on.
I haven't participated in this debate, so I don't have theories ready. I mean, just listening to you talk, the other thing that's really changed in football, well, a couple things. I mean, you can talk to the quarterback, which I saw a defensive player say recently, up to the 15-second mark of the play clock, that advantages the offense, although defenses can do it too. I do wonder, offense has gotten, especially quarterback play, a lot simpler, right? The quarterback does what's instructed. The play calls have got, now this is not like Shanahan's offense.
Bobby Wagner was saying that, right? He was talking about that's the biggest thing over his career is that the quarterback's just an extension of the offensive coordinator's brain now.
Yeah, like Sean McVay was one of the coaches that let's get to the line real quick, and then I'll tell you what to do once we get to the line of scrimmage. Because we're going to spend our time talking on the headset, not while you're in the huddle, but while we're all looking at the defense together. And he's a savant and could solve those problems. So, I mean, that's the opposite of what we're talking about. That we're talking about why his defense gotten better. I wonder if are the quarterbacks less able to solve problems on their own because the offenses have gotten so simple that they're just trained to follow the simple rules of their offense. Peyton Manning was a real chess player at the line of scrimmage. Like, he could solve a lot of problems. Sean McVay's offense is not simple. Kyle Shanahan's offense is not simple. So these are guys that are maybe advantaged by getting to the line of scrimmage quickly. If you have a very simple offense, maybe there's less of an advantage. And most quarterbacks in college are not coming into the NFL ready for huddles, long play calls, complicated reads. So there's been a simplification, which has made it easier to be efficient at a lower level and to be efficient faster. But it also makes it harder at the highest level if you're trying to adapt to that kind of offense. So, I mean, that would be another theory. Like, to your point on space, the game changed when offenses spread out. And so linebackers went from being big, hulking middle linebackers whose job was to plug the gaps and became faster players whose job was to run sideline to sideline. Thus, while they're not physically more imposing, they do take up more space by virtue of their speed. So that would be part of your theory. The spread offense actually spread out the defense and made it harder to find holes, even though initially made it easier to find holes. I'm just spewing. Yeah. I'm spewing theories now.
Well, nobody
maybe
really
defensive
knows.
Analytics have caught up. It makes sense that offensive analytics would be the first ones and the more advanced ones because they're the ones controlling the situation. But maybe defensive analytics. I think when you talk to guys, football coaches used to spend so much time on menial labor. We're going to watch every piece of film. We're going to physically cut it. We're going to physically tape it. Then they evolved even when it was digital. We're going to write down every formation. We're going to write down by hand on a yellow legal pad everything that's happening. And then from that, we'll see the patterns of what does this offense do on third downs? What does this offense do in short yardage? What does this offense do in the red zone? And now you can just go into your computer program in basketball at Synergy and you go, give me all third and short plays. And now the defense has access to all of that information very quickly. So, I think that maybe that's another theory is that the defense can now very quickly study an offense. When I was listening to Mike Silver's book, The Why is Everything. I know you interviewed him about it. And one of the things in that book is how it took the NFL a whole year. It took them to an off season to figure out what Kyle Shanahan was doing and Mike Shanahan were doing with Robert Griffin III as their quarterback.
Yeah. Back
in whatever year that was, 2012, whatever year, RG3. Yeah. And now they would be able to adapt more quickly because the way you can filter film is it's better, it's faster. So maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, it almost creates a stalemate where it's not, it advantages the defense, but the defense and offense being evenly matched, I guess, is how many points happening. I don't know. I've never thought about that philosophically. If they're evenly matched, what does it look like? How many points? Well, okay, well, I can give you another wacky idea. From the Football Skeptic, billionaire Ethan's been given the team. Nobody can check me. Nobody can tell me I'm wrong. I'm Jerry Jonesing this thing. I want 11 fast guys on defense. Just 11 fast guys. My theory, everybody's going to run between 4.3 and 4.5. Everyone's going to be interchangeable. I'm not even getting big or fat guys on the line. And I'm going with my theory that the collective gang tackling speed and ability to just shoot through gaps is going to be overwhelming and so confusing and disruptive to quarterbacks because anybody can be anywhere. That's going to be devastating. I'm going to bring the switching Warriors 2015 defense to the NFL. What do you think is going to happen?
I think this one, I will be an immediate skeptic on. You are going to get pushed around. Now, you're not Jerry Jones, you're Al Davis, but you are going to get pushed around. You know, a fundamental football belief that I do think is fundamentally true is it is on a basic level about big guys who can push the other person around. And not only do you
drafting Shamar Stewart to be the biggest thing that I've got going.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get pushed around, then I don't have to do anything. You know, I can run Air Force's offense against you. And then I can throw when I want to because you're going to have to commit so much personnel to the run. And now you're going to play from behind. And that is really, I think, that's like the crux of the Kyle Shanahan of a lot of these guys. Like, we're going to run the ball and then we're going to get the lead. And then it's going to be really, the possessions are going to be so few that you're not going to have the time to catch up.
What if I'm coming at it from an angle? What if it's almost like the equivalent of the Mike Shanahan zone read running where you cut at an angle? And yeah, you're pushing forward, but I'm getting my guys in from the side. What about that guy? I mean, I don't know. I can't defend this. Everybody's going to act like I'm a crazy person. At some level, I believe that such a thing could work, but it would have to be implemented by somebody who knows what they're doing. And that would not be me.
Yeah, the other challenge is running fast is different than thinking fast and playing fast.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think we've seen repeatedly that simply a fast speed does not mean you can do the other stuff required.
Maybe what my crazy ideas require is to be leavened a bit or a little bit of compromise. So, and to be clear to everybody, whoever's going to get mad at me, I'm not too married to any of this. I know my lack of expertise. I'm playing a role in a way. But maybe the idea with the training camp, don't do anything with the defense. It's tough because the offense needs somebody to practice against. You know, we'll figure it out. But defense is see ball, hit ball. You know, maybe that's one where we don't have to go over as much or do as much with offense. Maybe that's the one to protect. That's the side to protect. And in this case, you don't build the whole roster of guys who are 4.5 between 4.3 and 4.5. Maybe you do have some big guys, but then it's the passing down. Then it's 3rd and 9. And maybe at that point, we run the crazy interchangeable thing that I'm talking about. Maybe that would be the way to approach it.
You know, the difference between basketball and football is in basketball, your length and your foot quickness, it matters in both, obviously, but you're not allowed to just grab the guy in front of you, push the guy in front of you, hit the guy in front of you. We're talking about all 5 players have an advantage when it comes to filling passing lanes. And in football, I can just push you in the chest and knock you on your back.
Yeah.
Right. If you're not strong enough to stand up, then it's not going to matter. I also, and you would know much better than me on this, but I remember after Draymond and after the Warriors, and it was like, oh, everyone was the next. Everyone thought they were finding the next Draymond Green. Like,
and nobody was that.
This Denzel Valentine guy.
Good pull. That's exactly the name I was thinking of.
And it's always, but there's so many. And I remember seeing it in college, calling college games. All of a sudden, there are all these players like, I'm kind of like Draymond. It's like, well, you're 6'4".
Draymond made so many guys so much money who should not have made money.
Yeah. So it's like, I think we see it in football too, where this guy can play safety and linebacker, and we can put him at the line of scrimmage. And then it turns out there's only, you actually can't just draft based on physical traits for that skill set.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that was definitely a thing. And I think that was downstream of what we've talked about with draftism. You've seen something similar with Brock Purdy, where it's like, this guy could be the next Brock Purdy. And
I call BS on that.
Yeah. Well, I think
everybody said we're going to draft, like, oh, the NFL is going to draft differently now. And I'm like, no, they're going to suddenly start drafting guys that they think are short and don't have strong enough arms in the second round. Like, no, they're not. And they don't.
No.
Anthony Richardson will still go in the top 10 years from now. It's still going to happen.
Which, frankly, it gives more ammo to the football skeptic that maybe the league doesn't know what it's doing. But, yeah, I think it's, instead of just reacting to the idea that this person is unique and everybody missed on it, going, oh, this is replicable and this is a type. And it's not always a type. But at the same time, Draymond did usher in a completely new way of defense in the NBA, and defense has been changed by what the Warriors did with switching everybody, and did a lot to marginalize big men. But then they come back. So maybe big men are eternal. Okay, so this is less a skeptic thing. This is more of a why the hell, how the hell, explain it to us guy. And after this, maybe you can ask questions of me. We'll figure it out. Marquis Siegel. Is that the correct way to pronounce his name? Just off the bat.
Yes.
That's the correct way. Marquis Siegel seems to be the best young rookie the Niners have. The Niners appear to have done it again. They have drafted guys in the early rounds who haven't contributed much tangibly. Maybe they're good. I don't know. And then they've got later round guy who really pops and unexpectedly. What I want to know is this. This guy is the fastest safety in the draft. Rave reviews from the coaches. Oh my God, what a film study. You can't even get him out of the film room. He's just great character, wants to absorb all the knowledge. How does this happen? When the 49ers drafted him, a lot of the criticism was he shouldn't have even been drafted, that he wasn't on anybody's radar. I don't understand the NFL draft where the fastest safety, who apparently is of good character, is somebody we react to by going, I don't even know why that guy was drafted. Is it just vibes that dictate the draft board? What's happening?
He also has the fastest first 5 yards of any player, 15.3 miles per hour.
Yeah, what's going on?
And he was drafted in the 5th round, and people thought that was too high.
Reach.
So 2 things. One, we've played 2 preseason games. So I think it might be a little early to declare the battle over.
Don't throw cold water on Siegel.
That said, it looks like he's got a real shot to start for them. And the 49ers do they have a complicated scheme in their secondary. There's a lot going on. Robert Saleh's back as their defensive coordinator, but Gus Bradley has come in. Gus Bradley was he was there for the birth of the famed Seahawks secondary, the Legion of Boom, with Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor. So maybe that is a challenge, right? How do we measure somebody's ability to quickly learn, process, and execute? I will say, when I go back, if you go back and I interviewed somebody who covers Kansas State right after that draft, and what he said, and maybe this is what teams felt, and time will tell, we'll get to see it play out here. What he said is that Marquis Siegel doesn't play as fast as he runs. His game speed, which is something that, that's a thing. That's not a new concept. Somebody who runs quickly but doesn't actually play as quickly.
Sure.
And so that was kind of the knock on him coming out of Kansas State. So I think that was one of the probably major contributions. But you're right. I mean, this is a sport that regularly just goes, oh, this guy's fast. And he's big enough, and he's no red flags from a character standpoint. Great. Like, let's draft him. So it is perplexing. It is weird. It is weird. But
it might be related to this other thing, which is the football skeptic is dubious that the people in football appropriately value positions. The skeptic wonders if it's just vibes as to which positions get paid way more than other positions, because especially on defense, any sort of position can conceivably have an impact. And was Ed Reed not a big deal in his day? Did he not terrify Tom Brady? Tom Brady was worrying about where he was everywhere. Of course, he's one of the greatest of all time. But I'm talking about how safeties, they don't get paid as much as other players. They're not considered as important as other players. How confident are you that the pay scale in the NFL is priced according to impact, or do you suspect it's something else?
Well, George Kittle's a very impactful player and doesn't get paid. He plays tight end and doesn't get paid like other receivers. I think that's probably the best example. I think it's just a matter of leverage. You know, when there's not a lot of people at your position that are great, you would think it means that you're going to get paid a lot more money than everybody else. But actually what it means is that the group just doesn't have any leverage to get more money.
We saw that with running backs.
Because everything's about precedent. Yes. Oh, you can be the highest paid tight end. Great. Right? Because the cap goes up so much every year that every new contract has to be the highest paid at that position. And for some positions that it just doesn't mean a lot if there's only 3 or 4 other elite guys that play your position. And I would say George is a great example of that. So yeah, I don't think it's always reflective of, like, centers is the one that blows my mind. Like this guy touches the ball first. His job on a lot of teams is to help the quarterback or replace the quarterback when it comes to setting the protection. How are we going to block the defense long enough for the quarterback to throw the football? That's a pretty important job. The guys that are good at it stay on the team for 10 to 12 years. And yet, like, we'll take it in the second round. Right? Again, I think it's precedent, what you said. I think that's the best way to put it. I said vibes. You put it better, that it's the idea of we've been doing it this way, so we're building on the logic of that. And because the money is growing, whoever plays this position is not going to throw too much of a fit over it. And so it's not logical. It's not correlated to value. I don't think that Jamar Chase is twice as valuable as George Kittle. That's crazy to me. That doesn't make any sense. The 49ers barely had any wide receivers last season. It was a bad season, but they had the 4th best passing offense, according to DVOA. I think Kittle's probably, not even probably, he's got to be the main reason for that. And it just doesn't make any sense other than precedent as to why his position would make half as much as the wide receiver position. I've pointed out that the teams that go to the Super Bowl tend to have excellent tight ends. Receiver could maybe not. The Eagles did. They had great receivers, but it's just not as much perhaps a necessity as it gets paid. And I do wonder. Have the 49ers had great receivers in their 2 Super Bowl runs?
Not really.
Not Hall of Fame. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders was their best receiver the first time in 19.
Yeah. Ayuk would go to the Hall of pretty good if he didn't get injured, but not great. A lot of I'd say kind of a more flawed player than was assessed when people were debating over if he should get his contract. And so I think that it's the precedent. And I also think, and it sounds crazy, this is totally a skeptic take, I sometimes wonder if fantasy football actually does set the market in the popular mind and it filters down. I know that sounds crazy, but I just wonder if receivers have had such a bounty because they've increasingly just been showcased in fantasy football. It sounds stupid, but I wonder. It's if you're piling up stats, you're going to be more valued. You're going to have more of a name. You're going to be more on the marquee than somebody whose responsibilities aren't as statistically based.
So I agree with the last point. I don't think that's necessarily fantasy football connected, but you throw the most to the receivers so they catch 14 touchdowns and 1,500 yards, and so they're going to get paid the most money. I think that's what you're saying, and I agree with that. Like the more points you score, the more rebounds you get, the more home runs you hit, the more touchdowns you score, the more you get paid.
Yeah.
Which makes left tackle funny because how do we exactly? I mean, we have ways to measure it, but it's none of these other ways,
Well,
and they get paid a lot of money.
they do, but they actually don't get paid as much as I guess I thought. You know, I'm used to thinking about them as the second highest paid position, but they're not even close to the wide receivers right now. And I'm looking, and all this stuff can be funny money and noodled around with, but the average for Tristan Wirfs listed number one is 28 million on Sport Rack, for instance. And that's not the 40 million that Chase is earning. And again, somebody who actually knows might be able to say that you've got to look at it from some other perspective. But I wouldn't be shocked if we looked at this and they had lost status over time relative to receivers.
As Mays points out, running backs have, right?
Yeah, that definitely happened. And that one is weird because they were important in fantasy, but then similar to baseball, the wear and tear theory came into play. And you weren't just giving a guy all the carries and you were dividing it up. And so that had this impact and they became undervalued. They certainly became, I mean, it's crazy when I look at it, how undervalued they are.
Well, I think, like the Shanahan offense would be an example. You can get 80% of some 70, I'm just making up a number, 75%, 80% of somebody's production for a fraction of the price at that position. But there's a couple guys who just are irreplaceable, and the 49ers happen to have one of them, right? Christian McCaffrey.
If he's healthy. But yes, he brings.
Well, when he's not healthy, we also see that he's not replaceable.
That's true. It's definitely true, and it's just crazy. It's crazy. It's just it seems arbitrary, but I guess it's anchored in precedent. And I might have run out of my wacky ideas to throw by you. I'm sure I could come up with some others. I was going to question how important O-linemen are and wonder if the problem is that they don't get to choose where they are to an extent, and that compromises the value, even though people talk about how valuable they are. And maybe that's why they're running more bums out there nowadays, but I can't get into it. I don't know as much as anybody who's studied that in any sort of detail. It's just it's the great mystery, the O-line. I mean, how confident are you when you're talking about that stuff?
Well, I do think for the most part, you can make clear lines of delineation on physical traits, arm length, you watch foot speed, like these things. The counter argument to what I said earlier about center would be a tackle it's physically, there's less people that can do it because you are kind of on an island out there blocking somebody one-on-one. It's less the case for a center. And the traits that a center has are easier to find than a traits of an elite tackle. Yeah. I do think the overarching thing with all the stuff we're talking about is I think we undervalue how unique it is to put the right person in the right place on the right team with the right teammates, with the right coaches, with the right scheme that fits their skill set exactly right. It's just the exception. When a player reaches his full potential, it is the culmination of so many things going right. You think about the two greatest quarterbacks of all time, and now Mahomes becomes part of that conversation. But I think it applies to Mahomes too. This was not a dominant college. This was not a guy who won every championship in college. Joe Montana and Tom Brady, you win enough. Nobody asked anymore if you're a product of circumstance. Does it happen to be coincidence that Tom Brady and Joe Montana, the two greatest quarterbacks of all time, happen to play for the two greatest coaches of all time? Or does it happen to be circumstance that the two greatest coaches of all time happen to have the two greatest quarterbacks of all time? And now Patrick Mahomes, who is another one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, happens to have one of the great coaches, certainly one of the great offensive coaches of all time. Like, can you win at a high level without both of those things for an extended period of time? Phil Jackson and Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal and Greg Popovich and Tim Duncan, like, when they all come together and everybody is able to maximize their potential, it is the exception.
Yeah.
It's the exception. And so is Marquis Siegel going to be a great player? Is he going to forget a great player? Is he going to be a 5-year starter? If he is, does that mean he would have been a 5-year starter or a 10-year starter anywhere else? And if the answer is no, he wouldn't have been a 10-year starter anywhere else, does that mean he's not as good as we think he is? Or does it mean he finally got to the place where he maximized his potential?
The idea of maximizing potential, it's an interesting idea. I'm thinking about Steph Curry. There's a universe where Steph Curry never becomes all of what everybody just celebrates worldwide. Where Steph Curry, I should be more specific, where Steph Curry does not become someone a random woman from Siberia has heard of. It's a very easy alternate timeline to imagine. It's called Mark Jackson doesn't get fired, Steve Kerr doesn't get hired. Because, yes, Steph was a sensation. Yes, he was one of the most popular players in the league. All-star level, all those things. But one of the reasons people were balking at it when he became superstar, arguably best player, the thing was he couldn't really get to that level. And he wouldn't have gotten to that level, I don't think, if Steve Kerr hadn't arrived and said, look, this is our new offense. It's as off the ball as it is on the ball. And we're just passing constantly to just terrorize the defense in this way. We're not having you pound the ball. Any other coach, I believe any other coach would have just had Steph pound the ball, high dribble, pick and roll. You've certainly seen it a lot in the form of James Harden. They just would have had Steph be James Harden. That's what Mark Jackson was doing. And he never would have really explored all these different aspects of his talent and pushed it to a new level. And so it becomes this conversation sometimes when guys pop in a situation that was optimized for them as though it should be taken away from them because something else hypothetically, I don't know, could have happened or would have happened. But then what are we doing? All that matters in the end is what people did. What are we doing here, Guy? What are we doing here? What is our purpose?
It sounds like a review of this podcast.
I don't know. It's either terrible or good, like all of them.
I think it's so easy to say Joe Montana or Tom Brady wouldn't have become this somewhere else. And it might be true. But also, somebody else in their place would not have accomplished what they accomplished, with the exception of, okay, Steve Young could have done it. Maybe.
Nearly didn't.
Maybe not.
Nearly didn't.
1-1, you know. But,
well, I'm saying Tampa Bay, out of the league.
No, well, exactly. But I'm saying, like, you can't just take somebody, plug them into that same position, and then get the same result. I think Purdy is similar to this. I don't. We've done the Purdy Steph thing before, and it's premature for him, for Brock, given how much Steph won. Yeah. But you do get to a place eventually, if you win enough, that there's really not an argument against it. Right. We can't say anymore. People stop saying it.
Well,
but
it's not just the pundits either. I think Bill Belichick underrated Tom Brady. I think Bill Belichick thought he was the reason for the Patriots' success, not his quarterback. I think Bill Belichick looked at Brady as some kid who was lucky enough to have fallen into this position alongside Belichick. And when you look at how that relationship broke down, there was definitely a strain of disrespect coming from Belichick towards Brady. It appears that Belichick forced Brady out. And lo and behold, Brady won a Super Bowl without Belichick, and Belichick has not sniffed the sort of success that he was having with Brady. And so that one's interesting to me, that it wasn't just the media, it wasn't just people like us. After a while, we had largely bought into the idea that Brady was actually great because he'd been doing it for so long. But the guy who had the most information and had seen up close the most to perhaps justify the idea of this guy's greatness really didn't appear to maybe believe in it. I find that pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. It is interesting. But I think I have speaking of half-baked theories, and I'm sure people can come up with ways to dispute this. But I would wager that anything great that's been done has not been done alone. It's very hard.
Yeah.
I'm sure we could find exceptions, but it's just, there's too much. There's too much to do. There's too little time, especially in sports. You don't get to peak at 44 in sports. So you better be playing early, and you better have playoff experience right away. And you better be able to handle it, and you better be healthy enough to get to year 5 and have put a lot of snaps under your belt. And if all goes well and your coach is good and you can win a championship early like Brady did, where it's not all on you, maybe by year 7, you can be the fully realized what you're supposed to be version of yourself, because you better peak at 31, because you're not peaking at 41.
Yeah.
You just don't have the time. You just do not have the time. And I think when we talk about all these quarterbacks, I'm fast. I never get tired of debating Brock Purdy or any other quarterback.
Well, you got a lot of these hypothetical guys on the other end too, where it's Justin Herbert. Oh my God, he's great. And the situation, and maybe, I don't know, but at a certain point, you are just whatever you did, and we can come up with theories on how you've been undermined, and it would have been something different. But the skeptic wonders sometimes. The skeptic wonders if there's a lot of capital and a lot of theories to explain why one guy came up short, because you're anchored to the idea that he should have been great, and that's what's really happening here. But anyway. Do you have questions for me?
No.
You have none.
Not anymore. I don't.
You don't have any more. You came in. I thought I was wondering. I was braced. What's it going to be? What's he going to ask?
Yeah, we talked about the injuries. We talked about Marquise Siegel. So those were 2 questions.
The America wanted to know about Siegel. There's a pressing question.
I do think there is just an overarching, interesting question. The ongoing debate, right? If Kyle Shanahan had won one of the 2 Super Bowls that he played in as a head coach, or maybe the one as the coordinator and another as a head coach, there would be no debate about how good he is. And I don't think there's much debate anyway. I think he is clearly one of the best head coaches in the NFL. His track record says it. The fact that so many other coaches continue to try and do or evolve what he does says it. But there is this very online. I think it's very online. We should ask your neighbor if it's very online.
Neighbor, have you heard of Grant Cohn? Have you heard of the Cohn Zone, neighbor? Have you?
He's heard of the Cohn Zone. He has heard of the Cohn Zone.
If he hadn't heard of any of this other stuff.
He's definitely heard, yeah. If for nothing else, then he knows Lowell.
He doesn't. He's my age. This guy there's no way he's heard of Lowell.
Oh.
No offense to Lowell. Yeah. You pictured an old man. He's not.
He wasn't reading Chronicle. He wasn't watching Chronicle Live. You were on NBC Sports. I mean, that's not too old to have been watching all that stuff.
Look, I don't understand how he interfaces with the world. I've got a lot of questions, but he's happier than anybody else I know. So whatever he's doing,
there's something to it. But anyway, that's my give me your your football skeptic outsider opinion on Kyle Shanahan's place.
It's so funny you mention this. I have a bias against Kyle Shanahan, and it has something to do with something Lowell Cohn said. It's stuck in my mind. It might be unfair, guy. I feel terrible saying it. I feel like a snob. I don't even want to tell you about it. But I was watching Lowell talk about Kyle Shanahan, and Lowell Cohn, for those who don't know, crotchety sports writer out here who covered Bill Walsh in depth. And I think a lot of Lowell's perspective is this guy's not any kind of Bill Walsh. And it's all complicated because I think Kyle has been, let's say, curt with Lowell's son, Grant, who covers the team. And Grant has
I couldn't imagine hearing this for the first time, having this described.
I'm imagining trying to explain it to my neighbor. I can't. It's
so
all
good.
It's all just disintegrating upon impact. It's just the words are sounding like gibberish as I try to get it all out. Let's try to simplify it. Let's try to get back to what you were saying. Kyle Shanahan, Lowell Cohn. Lowell was saying, to paraphrase, he was saying, people say he's some great intellectual. He's so smart. Does he come across that way to you when you see him talk?
See, it's what I love about
Bill Walsh. Now he was an intellectual. You could imagine Bill Walsh being a professor, couldn't you? Yeah, you could imagine that. I don't see that with Kyle Shanahan. I mean, he doesn't seem dumb, but a genius. He doesn't seem like a genius.
What I love, the heart of your football skeptic thing is that less so now, but definitely once upon a time, that it's how a columnist thought, a newspaper column, right? The fan was not consumed with 12 personnel and the all 22 film.
Yeah.
And I think it's part of the genius of the football skeptic. It's part of the genius of Lowell. It's a very let's think about this on a very fundamental level first, right? And it's not everyone's, it's an advantage for your brain to work that way, I think.
Well, I don't want to be closed-minded. I've read Mike Silver's book that is actually describing to me, Kyle Shanahan is a genius. Here are the reasons and why. Here is the background on why Kyle Shanahan is a genius. And then I watch him do a press conference, guy. And it's, yeah, we're going to work on that and stuff. And I don't know, and stuff, stuff. It's just kind of like stuff, you got we're doing that stuff and stuff. And I just hear Lowell's voice about, not a genius, not a genius. Does a genius talk like that? Not a genius. And it's unfair. You don't have to be the most articulate guy in the world to be great. And maybe because you're so great and myopically focused on what you do, you're not caring about how you communicate and seeding your words with all this fancy talk and pretentiousness that I want. And yet it's just how I feel when I watch him. At the same time, what you're saying is true. We go back to that Super Bowl 2023, and I apologize to the 49ers fans, likely the only people still sticking around at this point in the conversation, bringing that up. But I remember they had the camera on the sidelines on that 4th and 1 in overtime against the Chiefs. And Trent Williams is screaming out to the defense. It's almost a tragedy. It's like that scene from Breaking Bad where Walter White is in the car and he's yelling from behind the windshield. Trent Williams is yelling, watch for the quarterback keeper. Watch for the quarterback keeper. He's trying to tell them on the defensive side, but he's too far away. They can't hear him. Nick Bosa, when they do that handoff, 4th and 1, he goes right for where the running back is. Mahomes wheels out. It's a quarterback keeper. He runs for this big gain on 4th and 1. Now, let's say Bosa heard Trent Williams and he just hit Mahomes in the backfield. I mean, that's plausible. Now Kyle has a Super Bowl. It's just like that. That right there could
but I would
determine
say,
it.
Don't you think if the left tackle knows what might be coming, the defensive end knows what might be coming? Maybe Nick Bosa was executing the fundamental of the play and somebody else was supposed to be there.
Yeah, but it was stupid. It was so stupid. Now I'm getting PTSD. Tony Romo was literally saying on the broadcast as this was happening, they're going to give it to Mahomes. They're not going to hand the ball off with the season on the line, 4th and 1 to Pacheco or whoever was back there. They're not going to do that. They don't think that way. Coaches don't think that way. That's the first lesson that Saban ever learned. He told a story about it, that when it's situation critical, think players, not plays, that you got to get the ball in the hands of your best player. It was going to be a QB keeper with Kelsey as some sort of option, which is what it was.
Right, for him to throw.
I've talked about this with Steve Kerr, where Steph missed the shot in 2019 in the finals. He missed that shot that won the Raptors the finals. And I was talking about it with Steve and how, I bet Quinn Cook could have gotten really open there. I really bet Quinn Cook could have gotten open there. But damn it, Ethan, I'm not giving the ball to Quinn Cook there.
LeBron, remember, once got criticized heavily for passing to Boobie Gibson. Didn't Boobie Gibson hit the shot? It was like, LeBron, shouldn't you be taking that shot?
There's an argument for Quinn Cook getting the ball in that situation.
Right. I mean, there was an argument once upon a time for Steve Kerr to get the ball, and Steve Kerr made the shot.
He did. But I also think Steve was a bit of a more proven commodity than Quinn.
Yes.
No offense to Quinn Cook.
But my ultimate point back to the 4th down play is I don't think you should assume, because there are two things that have to happen. You have to know it's coming, and you have to execute the proper defense of it. And I think it's more likely they didn't execute the proper defense than that they were surprised. If Tony Romo knew and Trent Williams knew, then I think it's also likely the defense that Nick Bosa knew that it was a possibility.
I don't
but,
know. Defensive ends are different.
He didn't know it was a certainty.
Yeah.
He just didn't know it was a certainty.
No,
but he
I'm
knew it
not
was
blaming
a possibility.
Bosa. I'm sure that's where the play was supposed to go, which gets us into a rabbit hole of do we
Can
blame
I make
the
a point?
coaching? Yes.
Well, I'll go back to the original point on Shanahan. I also think people are different. I've sat in many Kyle Shanahan press conferences. It's clear that his mind moves quickly. To me, like I think his mind moves very quickly. Where did he grow up? He grew up in an NFL locker room. I think if you look at his history, he's very part of Kyle Shanahan is player relatability.
So much. To be cool, he named one of his kids after Lil Wayne. There is a little bit of he's trying to connect with the players and be cool. I like this idea.
How many times have you heard, Kyle Shanahan's hard on receivers? Why?
Yeah.
Why do people say? Because he was a receiver. He is, a player. We don't think of him that way because he didn't play in the NFL, but I think that's part of his mindset.
I can't be. You think there's a different Shanahan who talks? He sounds like David Attenborough when he's out.
No, I think he's who he is. Like that's who he is. But that's a funny idea. But I think here's the insight I could add to you is that calling college football games, and I mentioned this before, but that means that every week I'm in a coach's meeting with two different coaching staffs, the head coach, the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator. And it is more often than not that somebody in the offensive staff room in that meeting, the OC, maybe a quarterback, somebody on the field pregame when I'm down there talking to people brings up Kyle Shanahan and his offense.
Yeah.
As it is today, because fans will see people say like, oh, maybe he's stale and it's passed him by. All these guys in college study him. They take his plays and Kevin O'Connell and Matt LaFleur and Sean McVay, but they still also take stuff from the 49ers. And I think that tells us that there is still an evolution going on. It's a constant evolution. And he is a part of it. He is not just the originator, even though he's not even the originator. Like Mike Shanahan is the, Bill Walsh, like all this stuff goes back. But in this modern version, he is still iterating in a way that the people in the business find useful.
Ricky, this is getting really deep in the weeds. This is going to be the last thing, and we got to get out of here, but I can do this all day, talk about these things with you. That's what I believe. I believe he is a genius. I just don't feel it in my bones. This is like a cowherd thing. There are things you believe, and there are things you feel. I believe it. That he is. Folks, Kyle Shanahan, not a genius you feel, but he's a genius you see on Sundays. Where was I? No, that's what I think. And there was that route off that bootleg looking thing. You were called in the game. You remember Purdy play action, and it's that classic kind of Shanahan thing. And Pearsall stopped. He had this crossing route. He just stopped on a dime, and everybody was complimenting Pearsall. Maybe it was Pearsall's decision, but if it was his decision, I feel like that's kind of risky. If you just go, oh, I'm just going to stop suddenly here. Maybe that's their chemistry. I actually thought maybe that's a Shanahan thing, and that's more of the iterating. And now that everybody's so scared of the crosser, we're going to have guys just suddenly stop like that. So that's a random thought. I don't know. I was just, freestyling. I don't know.
Yeah, if we're asking people to recall a play from the second preseason game, if they happen to watch the film, I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
But here's what that play made me think, and I think this is a separate. 2 years ago, the Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy was coming back from injury. Who's the better quarterback? I set out that training camp to grade every quarterback throw in training camp.
I remember. Using
the same system that Pro Football Focus uses, adding plus 0.5, minus 0.5, plus 1, plus 1.5, down to minus 1.5, good throws, bad throws. And what I learned, is that most throws that a quarterback makes in a game are zero throws or plus 0.5 and minus 0.5. I won't go too far in the grading scale, but the basics they're the basics.
Yeah.
They are zero throws. And I haven't looked at last year, but I remember this from a couple years ago. if you look at +1 and +1.5 throws, so these are the exceptional throws beyond, I call them the layups or the price of admission throws, right? Like to be a quarterback, the price of admission is you make a bunch of zero throws. If you look at the +1 and +1.5 throws, the exceptional throws, I think in 2023, the guy that led the NFL in exceptional throws was Matthew Stafford, and he had somewhere in the range of 53 of them. Well, if you divide that by 17 games, we're talking that in the course of a game, the best quarterback at making exceptional throws is making 3 a game. That most of the position is just putting the ball on the money in what looks to everybody else like a simple throw. But in fact, the backup quarterbacks in the NFL don't consistently make the zero throws. Kyle Shanahan, his favorite quote that I have, before he drafted Trey Lance, he said, there aren't 32 people on the face of the earth that can play quarterback at an acceptable level.
Yeah. Acceptable is the key word right there. Acceptable.
Yeah.
Not exceptional. Not exceptional. You know, the quarterback,
folks,
you know, people think it's the position of the exceptional when really it's the position of the acceptable. Caleb Williams, not acceptable. Not yet. No, that's a great point. It's very different from the NBA. NBA superstar is doing repeatedly with the ball something nobody else can do and just pressing that advantage and replicating it again and again. Yes, some of the points come off garbage junk, some offensive rebound. But yeah, I mean, a lot of what Steph Curry is doing every game or Gilgeous-Alexander is doing every game are a bunch of things that a peer just cannot do repeatedly. And so it's a very different way of looking at the quarterback position where a lot of it's just taking out the trash in a way or just doing what you're supposed to do. Anyway, you might have your doubts about this podcast, Guy.
Serious doubts.
Wonderful. You're a skeptic about this podcast. I'm a skeptic about the NFL. I loved this podcast. This scratched an itch of mine. I don't know what itch, but it was great. What do you have to promote for us?
It's fine.
You always say you're so cool. You're too cool. You've got a YouTube channel.
I don't think it translates to anything. I don't think anybody in the 19th minute of the second hour of a podcast goes, oh, this person just promoted something. Let me go find it. In the era where we can just, if somebody found it interesting, they would just Google it.
You would think. You'd be surprised.
That is what I think. That's what I think.
You would be surprised, though, sir. Yeah,
I would.
You would be. There are some muckety mucks who listen to this. I think it's crazy. I mean, I shudder to think about.
That's fine. I'm not surprised by that. I know people listen to this. I'm just saying, if someone's interested, they just know how to find it. They just Google it.
Yes, I suppose you're correct. I mean, you're not yes-anding me, but you are factually probably correct about that. It's more of a rhythm thing because I don't know how you end things. I'm not good at ending the thing.
Oh, Irish goodbye on everything.
That's it. All right. Well, see ya.
Cut.